Welcome, everybody, to The Dangerous Ones. I'm Nick Knutson, your host, and today I am so excited to welcome back Wiley Nickel. As a father, husband, attorney, state senator, and congressman for North Carolina, Wiley Nickel has committed his life to public service and delivering for working families. From voting rights to a quality public education to reproductive health care, Wiley has fought tooth and nail for issues important to North Carolinians. After the 2023 redistricting, North Carolina Republicans gerrymandered Wiley out of contention for the 13th district, a seat that he had flipped from red to blue just a year earlier in 2022. We were ecstatic here at The Dangerous Ones when Wiley joined us as our very first guest, way back in our third episode, and we told him at that appearance if he intended to break any news about future runs for office, he should do it right here on The Dangerous Ones podcast. This week, in one of the biggest faceplants of his political career, he went in another direction, announcing his run for Senate in North Carolina via the social media release of his first campaign ad. But we're forgiving him because only days after his announcement, he's back on the show to talk about flipping Trump toady Tom Tillis's U.S. Senate seat from red to blue in 2026. Wiley, welcome back, and congratulations on making the decision to run for U.S. Senate, as Joe Biden would say. That's a big fucking deal.
Well, and thank you for allowing me back after not breaking that news. But hopefully there was a wink and a nod last time I was on that this might have been coming.
Yeah. No, super happy to have you back. So let's just get right into it here. North Carolina Republicans gerrymandered you out of your seat. Now you're trying to take Tillis's seat. Let's be honest. Is this a revenge tour? Are you out for payback?
I mean, yeah, no, there's that's a piece of it here too. It really sucks when you go and you get elected to Congress. I flipped one of just 6 Republican seats from red to blue back then, and then they just erased my district. Gerrymandered me into an absolutely horrible district. No Democrat could ever win. I mean, you just get some districts that's just so red. So the thing I like about the Senate, specifically for North Carolina, is you cannot gerrymander the boundaries of the state of North Carolina. So right. We are a 50-50 state. And that part is something that I think is especially important. Not needless to say, we're down 3 seats in the Senate, and there's just really no math for getting a majority back unless we can win in North Carolina. We got to do it. If not, you're looking at states like Texas and Florida that are a lot tougher. Yeah. So super excited to get out there, start campaigning, traveling around the state, and focusing on holding Tom Tillis accountable, because he has just been a disaster. He has been a rubber stamp for Trump, and we got to have folks who are representing our state. And Tom Tillis is doing nothing but representing Donald Trump.
And so, yeah, and we'll touch on Tillis more later because I want you to dig in on him. But obviously, the question was a jest. We know that you aren't running for the Senate just for payback, a la Donald Trump after the White House Correspondents' Dinner or something like that. So tell everybody, this is a big decision. I mean, you have a family. You're 18 months out. This is going to be a long, grueling process. Like, why are you running to represent the people of North Carolina in the Senate?
I mean, just fundamentally, I am mad. I'm angry at what we're seeing in Washington right now. I mean, we have, a president who is literally shredding the Constitution, tanking our economy on purpose. Uh-huh. I mean, I hope it's ineptitude, but it really looks like total corruption. And that's the place I start. And you look at who's responsible? How can you hold someone accountable for what's going on? And for so much of this, we have Tom Tillis to thank. He says one thing, he does another, and when the chips are down, he lays down for Donald Trump, for Elon Musk, every single time. He's the one that gave us Pete Hegseth. He was the deciding vote for Pete Hegseth as our Secretary of Defense. So, he may kind of talk a big game, but then his votes are always with Trump. So, for me, this just is no time to be sitting on the sidelines. I know how to win tough races. We did it, once in a fair map in a Republican congressional district, excited to do it again. And, for folks out there who are just as pissed off and just as angry and want to be part of a race where we have a fair fight, this is a seat we got to flip. I hope they'll visit my website at wileynickel.com.
Well, and we'll be sure to put that up. And just to get this question out of the way, a lot of pundits and North Carolinians have been assuming that former North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper would throw his hat into the ring for the Senate. Is your candidacy an indication that he's not running, or are you just making an affirmative choice that regardless of your primary competition, you're in this for the people in North Carolina?
Yeah, I think Roy Cooper, our former governor, great governor. I served, with him when I was in this North Carolina State Senate. Just nothing but really positive things to say about him. But for me, this is about getting in there, holding Tom Tillis accountable. This is an urgent moment, and it takes a while. I think we learned that with Kamala Harris. If you're going to get out there and you get out too late, it's really hard for folks to get to know you. So for someone like me, I need to get out there, get around the state, and that's why we started so early, and why I'm so passionate about making sure we define Tom Tillis right now and hold him accountable.
We've been talking a lot on this show about overhauling the Democratic messaging approach from what Democrats say to how they say it. North Carolina always feels like it's within reach for the Senate, but even when you have a great candidate like Cheri Beasley in 2022, it always turns out to be a little bit of a mirage, although the races have been close. I think Cal Cunningham in 2020 was a point or so, and Cheri Beasley was 3 points or so. So what are you going to do differently, both in terms of what you say and how you say it, to reach out and persuade voters to sort of flip that +1 to 3 Republican margin into a plus literally anything Democratic margin?
It's about getting out there and campaigning with every ounce of your energy. For us, that's focusing on economic issues. But to step back about Tom Tillis, he's been elected twice in North Carolina, but in both of those elections, he didn't get above 49%.
There you go.
So this is a guy who is, he tries to talk out of both sides of his mouth, but it's definitely catching up with him. And so super vulnerable. This is a spineless coward we have a good chance to beat. And that's where we start here. But North Carolina has been moving in a better direction every cycle. While Trump won, in the last election, we had, the governor, the lieutenant governor, the attorney general, the Supreme Court, we won up and down the ballot. And, if you focus on these economic issues, you've got a good chance to win in North Carolina. That's how we won my seat in Congress. And, we're going to continue, with that same playbook. And for me, I think getting out there early is a big part of that, too. It's a big state. You got to get all over and make sure folks know, what kind of senator you're going to be. You're going to be a senator for North Carolina, or you're going to be a senator for Donald Trump. And that's going to be a big part of the campaign we're running. We put that in, in our front center in our video, talking about that. And, I think things are looking real good for that. But it's going to be a big race, so you got to get out there early.
And speaking of your campaign video, why don't we go ahead and play that right now?
Senator Tom Tillis, time after time on issue after issue, Tillis votes with MAGA extremists for the Trump agenda. He voted for the tariffs that are cratering our economy and driving up prices for North Carolina families. Instead of standing up for our state, he bends the knee for a would-be dictator. And that's why I'm running to represent North Carolina in the U.S. Senate. In this moment, with a president shredding the Constitution and an unelected billionaire wreaking havoc, North Carolina needs a fighter for what's right for our state, not a rubber stamp for Trump. That's who Tom Tillis is. Here's who I am. I'm Wiley Nickel. When I was 18, I lost my father to cancer. He was a farmer, and he taught me the value of hard work. But most of all, he made me want to roll up my sleeves and help people. That's why after college, I worked for some great leaders on important fights. I was a White House staffer for President Obama during some of his toughest battles with Republicans, like passing the Affordable Care Act and saving the auto industry. After serving the president, I started a family and started a business right here in North Carolina. I ran for state senate to fight for abortion rights, voting rights, and better teacher pay. Served 2 terms, then ran for Congress and flipped a red seat blue.
Wiley Nickel over Bo Hines. This was one of the most hotly contested races in North Carolina.
Far-right extremists are going to be rejected by voters.
In Congress, I worked on issues like affordable housing, healthcare, and an end to gerrymandering. Well, Republicans didn't like that, so they gerrymandered my district so I couldn't run again. Since then, Washington has become even more of a disaster, and the fact is, when the chips are down, Tom Tillis lays down for the billionaires, for the extremists, for policies that hurt North Carolina. This is a moment for a new generation of leadership with a fresh vision and the courage to fight for what's right. And that's exactly what I'll do in the U.S. Senate. This is no time for business as usual. Our democracy is at stake. Our economy is at stake. Our rights are at stake. President Obama always says, change won't come if we wait for some other person or some other time. The time is now. Join this fight at wileynickel.com. Let's get to work and get it done.
So I definitely appreciate the getting in early idea. I mean, politics is 24/7, 365, and in terms of like making sure that you have sort of the name ID and the trust across the state. Like, it's a big state, like you said. 18 months may seem like a long time, but I'm sure you and your team are developing a plan to sort of blanket every corner of the state. Our senator here in Oregon, Ron Wyden, who joined us here in studio a few weeks back, does a town hall in literally every single county in the state every single year, and that has done well for him. Like, he's been able to earn the trust of Republicans and Democrats alike across the state over a very long period of time. So I think that's a really good strategy. Okay, so let's dig in on Tillis. You clearly sort of one of your key early messages is being the anti-Tillis. So what exactly does that mean? Like, obviously you're saying he's a Trump sycophant who just does the bidding of Donald Trump, as it seems like literally every other congressional Republican does. But tell us some more.
Yeah, I mean, we have a system of checks and balances, and it only works if you have a Senate that's willing to actually, be a check. And, when your approach is, Donald Trump saying, if you don't do everything everything I tell you to do, we're going to get rid of you. There's no point in going there. You are not serving anyone but yourself, but this other person. So I think that's the place you got to start. And you just look at these horrible votes. I mean, he's the one who gave us Pete Hegseth. He voted for Trump's tariffs. And he'll say he's going to be against something, and then he'll get the pressure from Trump and Elon Musk and just fold. And really, the worst thing in Congress you can do of anything is tell people that you're going to be against a bill and then fold under pressure at the last minute. Because if you do that once, they know exactly what button to push, and they keep pushing it every single time. And then, you're no longer a senator. You're just, someone's tool. And that's especially dangerous. And for me, just really disappointing. I have some respect for some of the folks who are just super far right, super crazy. They have their principles. We can have arguments. We can fight about that. But it's the ones that, kind of say, oh yeah, no, this is wrong, and then do the other thing. That's the thing that really is, for me, very disappointing. So I think that's something we're going to really be pushing as much as we can, because the ineptitude, the grifting that we see happening every single day at the White House needs, a House and a Senate to stand up to them. And I think that's going to be part of the referendum in this next election, competency and having, a Congress that's going to fulfill their constitutional obligation.
And so, as you're going out around the state of North Carolina, a lot of people probably don't really know, who are watching this probably don't really know what the sort of economic profile is of the state. Like, what are the major industries? What does the workforce look like? How, tell us more about North Carolina and how, what the Trump administration is doing and Tom Tillis, as a key ally, is doing to harm workers, industries, and the citizens of North Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, North Carolina is an amazing state. We've got mountains, we've got the coasts, banking really big in Charlotte. In the Triangle where I am, we've got Duke, UNC, NC State, a ton of great, colleges and universities. The research triangle here, spins out tons of great, high-paying jobs. Armed forces, tons of bases, the biggest base in the country in Fort Bragg. So, those are kind of the pieces that are especially important for North Carolina. I spent a lot of time kind of working on those issues in Congress, making sure we're standing up for veterans health care, to make sure that the folks who serve in the armed forces are, have good housing, good benefits, good pay. Those things matter a ton in North Carolina, and then supporting these great jobs we have here in the Triangle and throughout the state, building economic development in rural areas. I had a district that was urban, suburban, and rural, so I kind of got to be part of all of those those issues. But for rural North Carolina really is the key to this next election, and we got to do a lot more for economic development. You got to show up too. I think that's you're talking about showing up to town halls. With Senator Wyden, that's super important for me. I think showing up is the first thing that most folks don't do, at least Democrats, at least nearly enough in rural parts of the state. So I did 16 town halls when I was in Congress, over 2 years. So we got all around the district, and you learn a ton. And I think that's where you have to start if you want to win in a very close state like North Carolina. That is moving in the right direction.
And that sounds like a really smart strategy to me. I think the difference in a statewide race versus a local race is that every vote matters. Like whether you're talking about the suburban vote or the votes in the cities or the votes in the rural areas, and I think you're exactly right. It's going to be a lot of those rural votes, and you don't have to win 60% of the vote in rural areas to be able to eke out a victory in North Carolina. It's really about just showing up, listening to people, understanding how the cuts at the federal level or the research in terms of in the cities, the research grants that are going to the sort of Raleigh-Durham area, that's got to be a huge concern for industry there.
Oh no, it's we're seeing thousands of jobs being just eviscerated here by Elon Musk and these cuts. Just one example, the sort of one of the first anchor tenants for the Research Triangle Park. This was a huge, the biggest Research Triangle Park in the country, was the EPA. 1,200 jobs. These folks are they're scientists looking to get safe drinking water, cleaner air. That's what they do. We're looking from going to 1,200, and cutting more than half immediately with these cuts. That's going to hit hard in the Triangle, and you have so many stories like this, with all of these cuts, and of course, why are they doing it? It's more tax cuts for billionaires and the super wealthy. All these cuts are just a fraction of what they're going after, plus Medicaid. So it's one, I hope that the weight of this just horrible tax cut bill, kills it and it falls apart, but really bad and, just really harmful for North Carolina.
On the Medicaid front, North Carolina is a Medicaid expansion state?
Yep.
Okay. And so...
and they may yank it away if they cut the funding. We have parts of the law allow them to just yank it all away. So really worrying.
And does North Carolina have a specific name for the state health care plan that's not like Medicaid?
No, it's Medicaid. I mean, Medicaid.
It's called Medicaid.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
some states have like Oregon Health Plan here, or like Hoosier Care or whatever in Indiana, where people don't even really know that they're on Medicaid because it's called something else.
But for us, there's a number. It's we're over 600,000 North Carolinians who are able to get affordable health care, the working poor, because of the Affordable Care Act, and that is all on the chopping block right now. Angry voters, angry people get out and vote. This is one where I think, it would be really harmful for our state.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the irony, Wiley, of these billionaires, basically, and corporations refusing to pay workers a livable wage and offer them the benefits that they need to subsist comfortably. The billionaires effectively buy the White House, and Republicans wins in Congress. Congress turns around and tries to shove through this this budget that'll slash Medicaid. Like, just it's galling that the same people who were originally depriving people of the ability to have health insurance and have to rely on the federal government for health insurance are now like sneaking in and getting their tax cuts so that they can and in doing so they're going to steal the healthcare that is necessitated by their greed. It's pretty disgusting. So I recommend running on that message.
No, for sure. That is a huge part of, I think, a winning message. And and I think, I was a more centrist member of Congress, but there's some issues that I think really Democrats need to really lean hard in, when we're talking about working families. And so for me, that's, the minimum wage. We've got to raise the minimum wage. And I've really focused on labor. I think labor is a place in the South where we just don't put as much emphasis, and we need to put a ton more there. I mean, we need to make sure we allow, folks to collectively bargain, to join a union. There's a ton of, economic benefit and empowerment there when we can get people, joining unions, getting better pay, better benefits, safer working conditions.
Yeah.
That's something for me that I think is really going to be part of a winning campaign in North Carolina. When you look at, this is, it's not a Democrat, it's not a Republican. It's just about making more money, getting, being able to take your family on a vacation.
Yep.
And that's what, allowing, more folks to be able to join a union means. It means a ticket to the middle class. And that, I think is a place where we can make up a ton of ground.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you juxtapose that against the, Republicans' party platform of essentially trying to eliminate unions where they can or decrease their power in every possible way, while the billionaires are stealing healthcare and all that kind of stuff. It's a great message. Unions are as popular as they've been in 40 years in the United States. So yeah, good call. So we're running short on time. If you had to boil your campaign down to a single message, or a single sentence, or whatever length, what would it be?
I think first of all, it's always hope. I think you got to start there. I've got 2 kids, 9 and 12. I want them to have a healthy democracy. I want them to have a good economy. So, I focus on, as a congressman, on issues that matter for families. And we have, this amazing democracy. I know it is bending right now, but it is not going to break. And when I see these massive protests of people out there, it gives me a ton of hope. And if you're just looking at one place where you got a fair fight, where you got a chance to send a message about where we are as a country, North Carolina's Senate race is that place. And I really believe in our state, and I know that we can win a Senate race here, and we can do it in a way that provides a blueprint for how Democrats can, get back those folks we've lost and have a winning message for the next presidential election, because we're going to have to beat Eric Trump, and whoever he has with him for the next thing. And but we can at least, or JD Vance or whoever. Right. But I think they want it to be a Trump. So JD's going to have to go do something else. But we got a chance to get that, to show people how to do it here, and that's the thing that really gets me excited about North Carolina Senate race.
Well, Wiley, congratulations on deciding to run and for joining us really quickly after you made that decision. That means a lot to us. Best of luck to you. Don't be a stranger. Keep us updated, and let's have you back soon.
No, I would love to come anytime. And I just have to say, I am super excited for Jake Auchincloss too. Cool. One of my favorite people in Congress to serve with, one of the smartest people that you'll ever talk to. He is somebody who is on the right track for the big things we got to do to win back a lot of those voters we lost. So I'm excited to see what he has to say here too.
All right, absolutely. And for all our viewers, make sure that you check out both the Wiley Nickel episode and the Jake Auchincloss episode. And again, Wiley, thank you so much for coming. If you're out there and you want to help support us, go to YouTube, subscribe, hit that little bell, and help us beat the robotic algorithm and move up and get more reach, and join us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all the places where you can get your podcasts. And it's really helpful if you go to tealandorangereport.com and subscribe there. And if you have the means, become a paid subscriber. It helps us out tremendously. Wiley, again, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.